All right, Alexander, we had a first round of elections in Brazil, and we have now a runoff on October 30th between the two leading vote getters. No surprise, it was Lula, got around 48%, and Bolsonaro got around 43.5, 44%. Bolsonaro outperformed the polls. The pollsters did not expect him to do so well, but he outperformed. And now we have these two heavyweights of Brazilian politics who are going to go up against each other on the 30th of October. Important elections in an important country, a member of BRICS, at a very important time. What do you make of this news?
Well, I think the important thing to say is that Bolsonaro didn't just outperform the polls, he massively outperformed the polls. I mean, I have to say, it reminds me so much of what happened in 2020 when the opinion polls were showing Biden winning the White House by vast lopsided majorities. And it turned out that that wasn't true, and it turned out to be actually a close election in the United States. Well, we won't discuss the issues of the election, but anyway, it's the same in Brazil. The opinion polls obviously massively skewed in favor of the left-wing candidate, completely ignoring the strength of the right-wing candidate. I think it's clear also that Bolsonaro won the campaign. He's been campaigning much more aggressively and effectively than Lula did. And if you actually look at the map, Brazil divides in two. So the north and east of Brazil voted for Lula, the poorer areas, the richer areas, the parts that provide the commodities where the industries are, they voted overwhelmingly for Bolsonaro. And importantly, and this is again reminds me of the 2020 US election, a big swing to the right in the gubernatorial and congressional elections that have been simultaneously taking place in Brazil. So Bolsonaro is pulling people with him into increasingly important offices. Even if Lula wins, which on balance he's probably going to, he's 48%, he's only got to get 2% more. One of the candidates that's been knocked out is a leftist. I would have thought most of those votes are going to go to Lula. Even if Lula wins, he will be a much weaker president of Brazil than some people would have expected. And I think the big question, the big unanswered question here is why? Why has this happened? And I think, again, the answers are exactly the same as those that you saw in 2020 in the United States. Working class voters in Brazil, apart from the very poor, are now swinging increasingly to the right. And why are they swinging increasingly to the right? Well, it's because of the social issues that we can't really talk about or discuss in programs like this. But we see this, it's becoming blindingly obvious that working class Brazilians who are mainly conservative on social issues, who are deeply Christian, not all of them Catholic, by the way. There's a strong evangelical movement in Brazil. They are unhappy with the position that the Brazilian government, that the left in Brazil is taking on these kind of issues. And they also see the left as weak on law and order, weak on the narcotics things, and weak on controlling things in the favelas and those sort of things. So we're seeing overall a swing to the right. Brazil is moving right.
Right. So the other big question is what is going to be their geopolitical stance?
Yeah.
If Bolsonaro wins and if Lula wins, because
right,
right now it's Brazil. They're the B in BRICS, But the pressure from the United States and from the collective West is going to be extraordinary.
Yeah,
So what happens there?
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting and very curious, because of course when Bolsonaro became president of Brazil, the universal expectation was that he was going to realign Brazil with the United States, distance it from the BRICS, and he got on very well with Donald Trump, who was of course at that time president of the United States. That was the universal expectation. Things have turned out otherwise. It's the case that Bolsonaro got on very, very well with Donald Trump. He clearly doesn't like Biden and the Democrats at all. On the global conflict over Ukraine, he's been increasingly showing himself favorable to Russia. At the Security Council the other day, Brazil refused to vote against Russia on a resolution critical of Russia proposed by the United States. It sided with its BRICS partners, India and China, and it refused to go against Russia. And I suspect this is going to continue, because the paradox is that the left in Brazil, Lula, people like him, are actually much closer in sentiment and ideology to the left of the Democratic Party than they are to to the traditional left, and probably feel closer to Russia, probably feel closer to the US in some ways than they do to Russia. Having said that, if Lula does win, as I still think he will, he was one of the founder members of the BRICS, and I don't think he's going to want to go back on that. So I think that overall, whichever party wins, whether it's Bolsonaro or Lula, Brazil will continue with its existing policy. It's clearly starting to sense that it's, again, another emerging great power like India. And instead of being drawn back into the orbit of the United States, whichever of these two leaders wins, whether it's Bolsonaro or Lula, it will continue to beat its own path. And at the moment, that means aligning more with the BRICS countries, with Russia over Ukraine, instead of teaming up with the United States, as many people expected.
Right. Okay. We also had elections in Bulgaria as well. Any thoughts on that? Borisov government, 25% is what they got. Borisov used to be in power. He was replaced by the Petkov WEF Klaus Schwab protege government, and now it looks like he's back in. And of course, Bulgaria has been a traditional ally of Russia, but it has taken a very bellicose, very aggressive stance towards Russia of late with its previous government. Do you see any changes in this new coalition, whatever it may be, in whatever form it may take?
There may be changes. I mean, I don't think that they will take this very belligerent anti-Russian position that the previous government did. But to be honest, I think that they're all very much now trapped within the EU, NATO complex. I think that, we're probably not going to see Bulgarian weapons supplied to Ukraine anymore. But I doubt that any Bulgarian government will be able to withstand the edicts of Brussels on things like sanctions, for example. And that's to be realistic about this. I get the sense that Bulgarian popular feeling is running increasingly strongly against the West on this war. But what the people want and what the governments do are not necessarily going to be in complete harmony. So yes, I think that there will be a dampening of Bulgaria's enthusiasm for support for the West in this war. But don't expect them to break ranks over sanctions unless some of the bigger hitters do. That's my view.
Yeah. Okay. The Duran.locals.com, Duran shop, 10% off. Use the code GOOD day. Take care.